Albania has done something which is the first in the world. He has appointed an AI algorithm as a minister.
Hold on a second. An algorithm is now a minister?
Absolutely. It is not a human minister looking after AI. It's an algorithm minister who is the AI minister. Enterprise adoption of AI is not keeping pace at the same speed. Change starts at the top. If leaders themselves begin to use the tools and the kind of emerging technology that is available, they begin to understand what kind of change could be possible.
Hi everyone, welcome to ATxEnterprise Tech Unpacked. I'm Edric, your host, and in this episode of the podcast, we are unpacking the challenges, implications, and strategies of C-suites to lead their teams into the AI era. From the varying pace of adoption in Asia, getting non-native AI leaders up to speed, and laying the foundations for the future of our workforce in the AI era. Now, we've brought in some key guests for this season, and for this episode, we're bringing in Vivek, who is the president and CEO of JA Asia Pacific, where he brings over 20 years of leadership experience to lead the organization's mission to inspire and prepare young people for employment, financial independence, and entrepreneurship across the region. Vivek, welcome to the podcast.
Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's great to see you, and thank you once again for coming onto the podcast to share your knowledge. We're really looking to unpack all these challenges of the C-suites and how they're going to lead their teams into this AI era. Now, the scary thing here is, just to set the context, is AI is moving faster than we can adopt. By the time an update arrives, both institutions and organizations are struggling to adopt them in Asia. So I'd love to pick your brain on this, on how perhaps C-suites, right, could lead their teams into this era. What strategies and perhaps what insights do you have about the landscape right now?
Thank you, Edric. This is a really important question. Working with the youth, one thing that I've learned, they just remind us of what we don't know. So I'm going to bring some insights from engaging with the youth as well. But the first experience I wanted to share with you, which really made me think about the potential of AI and how do we as leaders really embrace it, actually happened in a city called Tirana. I don't know whether you have been there. Tirana is the capital of Albania. It was my first visit there. I was there for the Junior Achievement Worldwide Senior Leadership Team meeting, and we were very fortunate and glad that the Prime Minister, His Excellency Mr. Edi Rama, could join us and meet the senior leadership team. Albania has done something which is the first in the world. He has appointed an AI algorithm as a minister, as a full minister. And the focus of DIELA, which is the name of the algorithm who is the minister, is to focus on the public sector tenders. And the whole idea is to make it more transparent to the rest of the sector. Now, if you...
Hold on a second. An algorithm is now a minister?
Absolutely. It is not a human minister looking after AI. It's an algorithm minister who is the AI minister. And when we asked him why did he go about doing it, it really was leaning in to embrace a new technology and to see in what best way can it be used for public good. Now, there is one other thing that Albania has done, which is they have brought the JA programs, the Junior Achievement programs, on workplace readiness, on financial capability development, and entrepreneurship to all the schools across the country. So, to my mind, the way we as leaders can lean into AI is to really embrace it and to see what it can do for us and build that as a learning curve for ourselves.
Really great to hear that. There are two things that I really want to pick your brain on, which is in the Asian landscape. Yes, we're talking about how leaders are actually going to start embracing AI a little bit more. But I also want to talk about the speed of adoption. Singapore, Hong Kong, even China, we're all picking up super quickly, right? But are there also parts of Asia which seem to be lagging behind, and how so and why?
We are often presented AI or any technology adoption as a bit of a race. It is almost we must be on adrenaline, we must be using Singaporean, chonging forward, and so on. I personally don't think that's the best way, because that leads to a lot of fear and failure, and sometimes flight. The way we need to think about it is, what is the job that we need to get delivered? And therefore, in what way the emerging technology of the day, in this case AI, can be most gainfully employed to address that challenge. I am an adopter of AI as well, and I have begun to experiment with it. I experiment with different tools. I certainly use it as my personal assistant in many of the work that I do. Now, the countries across Asia Pacific are obviously at a different level of evolution in terms of manpower constraint, in terms of readiness of the workforce, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think the best way to look at it is to compare ourselves with each other. No matter where we are, we need to decide that this is a technology we want to learn, and this is a technology that we want to adapt for the rest of the workforce. Taking steps like getting the employees aware of artificial intelligence tools, getting them trained on them, and encouraging them to try it out is more important than the pace at which the frontier AI solutions are shifting.
That's great. And I'm going to circle back to the future of the workforce in a little bit. You brought up a very good point when it comes to the adoption within your organizations. I love the fact that you have to be very clear about your why and your outcomes. Why are you taking this on, and what's the outcome that you need? So therefore, you can actually choose the right tools. I like what you had said about AI, that you have to embrace it rather than fear it, because many of us are actually doing that, thinking that it's going to be running a rat race and being ahead of the curve, or almost keeping up with the Joneses, but in this case it's with technologies rather than money. Now, I want to get your inputs on this, which is what strategies can leaders employ to support their organizations in effective implementation of AI. You do this at JA all the time for perhaps the future workforce, but what do you think is applicable for leaders today?
What is important for leaders? I always believe that change starts at the top. And if leaders themselves begin to use the tools and the kind of emerging technology that is available, they begin to understand what kind of change could be possible. We all know that the pace at which the consumer AI technology is moving, the LLMs that everybody seems to be using, from ChatGPT to Claude, enterprise adoption of AI is not keeping pace at the same speed. And there are a couple of reasons for that. I think it is important for us to think about our own processes and our own systems and not just force fit an AI solution to it, but to make sure that they are both evolving at the same pace. That is the kind of thinking that I've observed as I go across the region. So I was in my role is in 13 countries and growing across Asia Pacific. And every country that I go to, Edric, I meet up with the leaders, CEOs, and so on, or founders of companies in those countries. And I find that there are some who are really leaning in and embracing it. They understand how the process flow works and how could the agents work together with the humans in order to move the agenda forward. And in many other sectors, people are just waiting beyond the hype, what is coming out. Now, taking a step back, it is important as we are preparing our workforce, change happening at the top, and us creating an environment where people can experiment and they don't fear failure. The ability to create an environment where we don't fear failure is extremely important. And finding the right proof points, finding the right applications where people see it working and they are willing to then adapt it. Maybe I'll share with you one example from the JA world. We organize a program called Company of the Year. So there is a JA company program which is designed to bring the ability to become entrepreneurs to youth across the world. And they have to prepare a real product or service that they are going to sell at a trade fair, and they are going to pitch to judges from where we pick up the winners. And at last month's finale in Seoul, I saw how amazingly and effortlessly these kids are adopting AI. And they are doing it, small team can do so much more when they are really leaning into AI in a very productive way. And I think those are the lessons that we can take for us as leaders of large organizations.
It's great, because it is a fact that AI is truly a multiplier. Now, with all your conversations that you had with these leaders that you've met overseas and as you visit country to country, from off the top of your head, would you be able to highlight to me what perhaps is the barrier to entry when it comes to AI adoption? I'm very curious to understand which industries or even which markets, right, might be taking it faster, or it's easier to take up compared to some of those industries that are resisting it a little bit more, and for what reasons?
So, as we can see, the countries that have a very well trained workforce and that is facing challenges on productivity at times because they don't have the kind of numbers with which to boost the economy, they need higher productivity. And these are the countries clearly which are leaning into AI in a big way. Singapore has set up a task force which is chaired by the Prime Minister. When I was in Korea, similarly, there is a lot of focus on AI adoption. You can see it at the company level. You also see it at the national level. But at the same time, even in countries like Malaysia, we have a national AI office, which is coordinating these efforts on AI adoption across sectors. We also have a mission in India, which similarly has set up a capability to bring the sectors along. So at different levels, there are efforts going on across countries. I do believe that there are two parts of it that are critical. The first part is that we should not just think about workforce readiness at the point where we are making recruitment into the company. We need to go upstream. We need to find when kids are in the classroom, or rather the youth are in the classroom, and begin to prepare them for it. So in JA, we are working at it. We have set up an Asia Pacific AI Council at JA, where we bring together the policymakers who are leading the frontiers of AI in their respective countries. We are bringing educators who are similarly moving the agenda forward. But we also have industry leaders with experience and who are leading different sectors. That is the ecosystem we need, where we are able to do some crystal ball gazing in terms of how is the industry shifting, what kind of jobs are going to appear in the future, a 3 to 5, 5 to 7 year kind of horizon, and then bring that to the classroom. So we are able to produce the kind of workforce that companies will find it very productive to employ and therefore create value for a scale for their economy, but also for the region and the world.
This is great that you are really doing all these and setting the foundations for the future of the workforce. That this brings me to the next question, which is these are kids, young adults, and young professionals who are AI natives. Now, my question is for professionals around the middle age. We are not exactly AI natives. We are visitors of the AI era. We're tourists in this, trying to get our citizenship to an extent. Now, I'd love to hear from you about how perhaps some senior leaders, or even I'd like to get from you how perhaps from a senior leader's perspective, how do you get the senior to middle managers, getting them more involved in this process to pick it up, to embrace, and to become almost an AI native?
13 years ago, I was part of a global professional body and I was chairing the chapter for Asia Pacific as a volunteer. And one thing that we really wanted to do is to have the students in graduate programs learn from C-suite leaders in that profession. And therefore, we created a mentoring program. The purpose was to help the students. Now, when we were doing a catch-up a year after the program had been running, I heard something very amazing from the C-suite leaders. They said the reason we now want to take part in this, Vivek, because the numbers surged by twofold of people who wanted to be part of that program. I said, you are all busy people. Why do you want to do it? And they said, look, it is because for the first time, now we are beginning to understand the world that these youth live in, and therefore how we can make our transition to that world. In fact, one of my friends said, Vivek, now I understand my daughter a lot better because I've had these conversations. And people call it by different names. We call it reverse mentoring and so on and so forth. And I genuinely believe that those of us who are in middle tiers of the organization, we bring huge insights in terms of how the industry functions, the knowledge that is absolutely priceless. If we can if we can partner with the younger people entering the workforce, provided we have trained them up properly, and we can have that exchange and mutual learning from each other, that kind of intergenerational tag teams is going to make it very different for us. In J, one of the things that we do, and it has been our hallmark, we have been around for more than 100 years around the world. We have been nominated for Nobel Peace Prize 5th year now. One of the key models in which we function as a nonprofit is we bring together corporate volunteer mentors with the classrooms. So it is not just academic learning, but it is real applied learning. I will really think that these mentors also take away a sense of the world that these youth are growing into, as you said. So we are not just tourists who are watching it from a distance, but we are migrants who are there to set up roots.
Fantastic. I love that story. And since we're on the topic of the future, the next generation of AI natives, now that kind of gets me into the thought process of how they will become leaders and what kind of leaders they will become. Let me just extend that a little bit further. How do you think AI is going to change the makeup of our leadership teams? What's your take on this?
That's a great question. To my mind, the human leadership must have an affinity with tech. It must have an understanding of tech. The way I see it is there are two ways to handle creation of products and services in the future. One is going to be a very human curated way of doing it, which in the case of a Ferrari that is developed with a lot more human intervention. And it is going to have a premium, whether it is a product or a service, and you have got to be prepared to pay for it. And that model is going to exist. But at the same time, technologies and AI is also going to make things possible and happen at a scale. The decade that I was born, our global population was maybe about 4 billion to 5 billion people. Today, we are talking about 8 billion people, and that number is going to grow. And we need these technologies to be able to address the food security challenges, the healthcare challenges, and so on, care challenges at a scale, which is extremely important. So that's the first part of it. But the second part of it is being human. And this is something I saw firsthand, Edric. So in JA, we have a unique model where we don't just focus on the bottom of the pyramid, we work through the pyramid. So we go to the top tier schools, international schools, but obviously most of it is public schools. I was visiting this school in India, in Jaipur, and this was the top tier school. And we run a program which is around leadership with empathy and action. It's a JT Gulf India program that we run. And as I met this small team, they were sharing their experience with me. They had a project to do as part of the LEAD program. And as they got together, one of the kids shared that it seems a bit unfair that when we take the chauffeur-driven car to school, there are some kids who are playing in a field and they don't have to worry about homeworks and everything else while we are here doing it. So they said, why don't we visit that group of kids and find out what is it that they do? They went to visit them and they came back with tears because these were kids of construction workers where both the parents were working at the construction site and there was no way they could have the resources to send them to school. And after having that emotional experience, these kids decided they must do something about it. They made it a part of the project. They went to the site. They taught them nursery rhymes. The next time they went there, they found they had brilliantly captured it and they could recount or reshare it with them. They turned it into a one-step school. They created uniform for these kids and so on and so forth. Now, let's face it, across our region, while there is obviously mobility, and we want that kind of mobility to happen, it's very important that as the group of kids who have exposure to really good quality education and the supporting infrastructure in life, they are also exposed to the kind of world which is not the top 1% or top 10%. We are talking about the rest of the world. And therefore have that empathy and the emotional capital that they want to do something about it. And therefore, it is through the pyramid that we are able to move things forward and we are going to move things upwards. So AI is going to be very important, but to my mind, when it comes to leadership, empathy, and the ability to create this kind of human connect and care for each other is going to be equally, if not more important.
That's a great point because what's really interesting here is that the leadership of the future is going to have a lot of information at your fingertips. In the past, previous leadership meant I needed to find this information to make the best decision possible. Next generation of leadership is all the information is at your fingertips. Now what? So it's very interesting how that's going to actually transit. And I just want to touch base with you with regards to, like what you said, education systems. A lot of the time, our education system is still doing a lot of academic work. Where do you see that changing, and how do you think JA is really playing a big role in that?
So there are two numbers that really help or guide us on this journey, Edric. There is a 600 and a 60 figure. So 600 million is the number of youth that are going to be in the Asia Pacific region by 2050. 600 million youth. And as we know, if the youth don't have access to the right economic opportunities and therefore they cannot find a place for themselves in the economy and therefore in the society, instead of being the youth dividend, they can very easily become the youth disruption. And almost no society can deal with it. So that's the first number, 600 million. The second number that drives us is 60%. And that is the estimation from the World Economic Forum that 60% of jobs that are going to exist in the future, we perhaps don't even know about them yet. And things like AI that we are talking about are going to change those jobs. So when we are preparing the youth in Asia Pacific across the 13 markets, we already reach around 5 million youth every year. We prepare them for workplace readiness. We prepare them for financial capability to become entrepreneurs. So these 600 million are not just job seekers, but at least some of them can become job creators who are able to create jobs for the rest of the community. And as we are doing it, we find teachers as very important allies, Edric, in our work. So we have a special emphasis on preparing teachers for these kind of programs. So they inspire the children, they inspire the youth, and the youth don't feel afraid to ask them questions and be curious and inquisitive about it. The second very important allies for us are the corporate mentors. And I'm very grateful in all of our so busy day jobs or being entrepreneurs, they find time to go to the classrooms, they find time to engage with the youth. And that allows us to put a role model in front of the youth. And again, the impact that we see, of course, there are the numbers, the 5 million and so on. We have 150 million living alumni around the world. We have people like Mr. Mark Cuban, who is an entrepreneur, of course, on the Shark Tank. And he has said that what the J program participation did for him is help him build the muscle to become an entrepreneur. But there is one particular story that has always stayed with me. Our executive director for Japan is Yuriko-san. And she shared it with me recently. She said, I was walking down the street in Tokyo and an impressive young woman called out to her, Yuriko-san. She turned around and she said, do you remember me? She said, no, I don't. But tell me more. And she said she was in a prefecture where Yuriko-san brought to talk about workplace readiness, particularly in the financial and banking sector. Then she got a corporate volunteer from a bank to come to the classroom and therefore talk about what it is like to work in a bank. And that got everybody's curiosity. And then we arranged for a learning journey where we brought these kids to a bank. And she said, that was like crossing a threshold for us, something we would have never seen in our life. And suddenly there was a role model and there was a dream in front of what we could do with our life and how we could be successful. And she said, you'll be pleased to know now I'm a director in the same bank. That is how it changes lives. So our mechanism works a lot around certainly the skills, but the mindset, the resilience, the ability to be curious, the ability to learn, the ability to build something, and also about role models that people can emulate and grow into.
I'm going to have to throw you a curveball here, okay, Vivek? I think our listeners are probably looking at the next 5 to 10 years. You're setting the foundation for 2030. Now, in those 5 to 10 years, I think there's going to be a big expectation versus reality gap. And from the leaders that you've spoken to and the young entrepreneurs that are coming out from JA, what do you think those big gaps are? And what do you think these leaders who are listening right now are going to have actionable tips and strategies on how to best engage and utilize these talents?
I'll have 3 advice for leaders like me. The first, and I believe in it, don't let fear guide your actions and decisions. Especially, there is a lot of noise around AI, and that is understandable, Edric, because the amount of investment that is going into this sector is not in millions anymore. It is in billions with a B. And quite obviously, there's a big aspiration to create change at a scale. And yet, that is not today. That is not now. It is something that we have got to pick up. It is something that we have got to learn. It is something that we have got to experiment with. So let's not let fear paralyze us. We as leaders, we have got to try it, we have got to learn it, at every level. At every level, whether we are a 20-year-old, 25-year-old, 35-year, 45-year-old, we must learn by doing. That's number one. Number two is, let's be part of communities where we are learning from each other. It could be at workplace. There is always that first 10% adopters who are always the ones who are in every chat group around AI, who are learning new tools. And rather than fearing them, let's embrace them. Let's celebrate them. Let's learn from them and make sure that slowly we are beginning to move in that cutting edge as well. The third advice I will give is think about being a job creator of one. Because when I look at the youth, what has happened and what has changed significantly is in the past, and this is data from global entrepreneurship magazines, every adult that looked at an opportunity where they thought they could create a new setup, they could create a company and they could go after that, 2/3 of them do nothing about it. We find a nice business cap and we walk away from it because of multiple reasons. It's scary to be an entrepreneur or even an entrepreneur within a company. The kind of AI tools that are available to you now, it is possible to do that. It is possible to be an entrepreneur of one or an intrapreneur of one within a company to address real business gaps, to real unmet needs. And I know it might sound like a bit too aspirational, but I do see colleagues doing that. I see colleagues who are CIOs of large companies and who have got 4 people and they are themselves experimenting with, or CMOs who are doing it at the startups as well. So if we embrace it, I think it is possible.
All right, those are great points. Thanks so much, Vivek, for being this wonderful podcast initiative by ATxEnterprise. One last thing, please let everybody know how they can connect with you and also what's happening over at JA.
Great. Thank you, Edric. It has been so amazing to be in this conversation with you. And thanks to the listeners for listening in. I'm on LinkedIn, so just look for Vivek Kumar, JA, Junior Achievement Asia Pacific. You will find me. I would love to get your invitation. I would love to exchange notes and ideas with you. You can also visit us at jaasiapacific.org and see the work that we are doing, how you could volunteer with us, how you can make the world a better place for the youth that are going to inherit it. Thank you.
And you've heard from Vivek Kumar of JA. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. See you next time. Bye, everyone.